So yes, once again, thank you very much for spending the time and taking the time to kind of listen over this presentation. So The History of Medicine is a book I read, and it's authored by William Bynum. And it's a very short introduction, and it makes part of the Oxford series with the same name, a very short introduction. So going into the book, we have several phases in medicine, whether that's beginning off with bedside medicine to our current day modern medicine with the vast technology that we have. So beginning with the father of medicine, a lot would consider it of Western medicine, we have Hippocrates of 460 BCE, and around the location of modern day Turkey today. But we don't actually know too much about him. We do know that he existed and that he had an influence on medicine. But what is mostly known is the Hippocratic corpus, which is really about 60 works spanning about 500 years, collecting information about bedside manners, medical theory, and so on and so forth. And the early medical fathers, such as Hippocrates, the Hippocratic corpus, and the other genres, really stemmed from the philosophies that were going around at that time, whether that was Plato, Socrates, and so on. What is central in this period was its attention to the bedside and the patient. The patient-physician relationship was integral. In this instance, the physician had to really pay attention to what the patient was saying. They had to look at their symptoms and try to address those symptoms. And from that, we recognize that the patient had the power in the relationship, because they were dictating how the treatment will go and whether it has been successful. Also part of this period were the humors. Now, the humors had a great and vast influence for millennia after this initial period. And what this humors system of thought dictated was that life was balanced by 4 fluids, 4 humors, whether that's bile, whether that's blood, whether that's phlegm, and let me just double check the last one, and whether that was, by bile I mean yellow bile or black bile, and these both had different relationships to the body, and each were dictated to be important to the balance of the body, and one disbalance in one of the humors results in disease and illness. But at this time, there's also magical theories of disease. So a lot of ideas such as disease come from sins and so on. Afterwards, building from the stream of bedside medicine is Galen, who has had a major influence on Western medicine. And Galen really just emphasized that bedside importance of really knowing the patient and knowing their anatomy, knowing their history, to really get a better idea of what the physician needed to do. Galen also started depicting the anatomical features of the human body, but later on his theories would have been disproved. Another segment of the history of medicine is the library and information period, which was really spearheaded by the medieval Islamic medicine of the 8th century. In this period, there was a lot of collection of literature of the antiquity. So there was translations occurring, there was this mass boom of information, and we have these giants. One here is noted, and this particular person, Reis Avicenna, or Avicenna rays, really created one of the most major canons of medicine, which held medical theories, medical practice, anatomy, and new ideas in this period. And around then was also the beginning of the, or at least the start of this importance of learning from text. So learning from bedside as a means of gaining information on medical practice, but also learning from what's on the page, what have other people noted as well. And then we transition later on into the community and laboratory phase of medicine. And the community phase was really built from the need to manage epidemics, pandemics, and it really highlighted the importance of community medicine, which is both highly visible and invisible. Highly visible being that it influences policies, it influences the government, and it influences the economies of so many different regions, but also invisible because it doesn't have a necessarily physician-patient interaction, so much so like the bedside medicine does. Over here, I noted two of the major pandemics and plagues that have occurred during the medieval period. There was the cholera pandemic, really, that occurred a little bit later on than the Black Plague, but both of these had major implications on the economies of various regions. And laboratory medicine, I think this is where my last slides occur, but laboratory medicine, we see a lot more disassociation between the patient and the physician, and that's really when the beginning of a transformation between this relationship has occurred. Because now the patient is no longer the one dictating what's right or what's wrong, but it's the laboratory and what we find within the laboratory. So we have giants such as Pasteur, who really created this pasteurization process, examining various diseases at the time, and others as well, just beginning to discover that disease stems from various germs, it stems from various processes that influence the way of life of people, communities, and so on. And laboratory medicine has influenced our modern day medicine as well. But what the book has noted is that modern medicine is very much influenced by finances, the financing hospitals, financing care in so many different ways. And what we do know is that there's been a shift between a horizontal approach to care, a vertical approach to care, which is identifying, let's say, cholera, or whether that's rabies and other diseases, to more of what can we do to create more sustainable change over time. So hygienic practices, vaccination policies, and the likes. And while today we hear more of this, these trends have been occurring since the late 1800s, early 1900s. So what I want to conclude really with this book was it highlighted that medicine, yes, it was influenced by anatomy, but it's also influenced by so many other things. Different ideas have impacted what we know as science, what we know as medicine. And it has impacted the relationship we have with physicians and with broader communities. So that's what I wanted to highlight here. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian.
All right.
How did you like the book? What was your favorite part of it?
I think the book was really good in the sense of it was approachable. It depicted things really nicely. Mm-hmm. It highlighted that the relationship between the physician and the patient changes over time. Now I know another book kind of delved in a little bit deeper on that, but this made a nice introduction to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the author also noted that there's so many different things influencing ideas. There's different actors within history that influence what we know today, which I really appreciated about the book.
If you like content like that, the history of psychology is essentially the history of medicine, like the one at St. About. It's like you have to take 6 credits, and like in the fall term, you like basically like half of the term is like talking about these ancient philosophers and what they thought of health, and then like Galen and all of these people, and then with the humors and all that weird stuff. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there are any comments, I'm just looking through the comments to see if there were more questions. Oh, thank you for the pronunciation. I was having difficulty with that.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I know how to say it is because I took a class where we talked about it. It's The way my teacher would pronounce it is Hippocrates and Galen. But like, how would you know if you just read it in a textbook, right? So, yeah.
Right, Hippocrates. Yeah, so definitely it was interesting to me, and I think my interest later on, I want to focus on the community aspect of health in general, just because I see that has such a wide impact. Just looking at like the history and how these small changes have led to these big realizations, like washing hands have improved so much of health, vaccination as well. So I think that's where my interests lie. Sorry?
How much detail does the book go into those things? Like, is it like very broad, like narration, or does it go into like specific examples, or?
Oh, yeah, it goes into examples. So it goes into different writers. Let me see if I could find their names. But essentially, it really looked at how at a certain period, because of those pandemics and epidemics, there was a lot of government attention on how could we mitigate this. And one of the central players in all of this was really looking how disease often affects the poor. And it kind of looked at, okay, what are the conditions of the poor and why are these the case? And so we kind of look at that. And then at the end of the book, we kind of look at HIV. Now, HIV is not necessarily a disease of the poor, but can really affect anybody. So it kind of looks at, okay, how do these changes in community health need to apply to this disease here? Yeah. So it does go into detail on like different people, different time frames. So that's what makes it a good point.
Definitely, like personally, I think it's very important and interesting to talk about demographics as they relate to health, like ethnicities and like socio status. I love that kind of work. Unfortunately, like it's just not done enough because work just kind of goes very, very straightforward, and then along the way, some people try to, talk about the social aspects, I guess. So.
No, for sure. It's definitely a balancing act there, and then so it's definitely, I think, important to know like the vertical and horizontal. So what is one thing that we need to address, and what are the broader things that we need to do? And I'm just looking at Emily's comment here. And I also found it interesting that there's an Islamic history to medicine, or at least Western medicine. So I never knew that before, but there's a rich body of information that came from the Islamic region within the medieval era. That, in fact, one of the books, The Canon of Medicine, is one of the most widely read medical textbooks, and was written, like 500 years ago? So yeah, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. Yeah.
Oh, I see a question. So are some of the techniques and beliefs still held today? Well, a lot of them have been discounted or discredited, like the humorous theory. And then there was theories around the heart and how the heart pumps blood throughout the body. So that's been discounted as well. But the idea of bedside medicine has reemerged in Western medicine and in allied health, and and non-Western medicine, in the sense of they want to bring this holism back into the picture. So looking at the whole body of the person, the whole aspect of the person. So that's coming back into play. But yeah, that's mostly it. But for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Sebastian. And did you ever do you remember that email I sent you of a health conference I hope you can go to next year?
Sebastian, you're
We can't
muted.
hear you.
Yeah. I thought it was my connection. I was worried.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I did get it. I don't know what my schedule looks like too much next year, but thank you for that email.
We'll have to talk about it after this this whole Teams thing or whatever.
Right, for sure. And I don't think I'll be here for the next few weeks, just because I would be away. And for Emily's question, I'm in the nursing program, not the health program, but kind of related. So yeah.
Oh, very similar. I see. Like same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna present now, I guess, and then after my presentation, I'm hoping to, I guess, do some administrative stuff and ask some of you to sign up for later presentations in the year. Sebastian, no pressure, but I would love to maybe get a presentation near the end of the summer, just as a sort of like, where are you at in your thesis and what is going on there? Because it'll be really cool.
Thesis. Oh, whoa! I thought we were just reading books and presenting.
I said Sebastian, like to give like a sort of presentation on where his thesis was at. I don't know, Moise, if you'd like to sign up after, and Murat and Abdullah, if you're interested. Simon, I would love to hear something from you.